Okay, so check this out. I got this injury the other day. Yeah, it's not a rash, it's actually an injury. And I'll actually tell you guys the story of how this happened, but before I do that, it got me thinking about some of the craziest all-time injuries I've ever had, and I wanted to tell you the story of the craziest injury I ever received. We'd gotten into the car and we were going for a drive. There was 5 of us. There was me, my buddy Pat, my buddy Landon, my buddy Adam Barber, and a 5th friend who I'm completely drawing a blank on, and hopefully after I tell this story, they'll say, dude, how could you forget that I was there? But we were going for a drive around Boston. You're marking that territory, huh? Showing everybody where your fence line is. It's good, because that's actually where my fence line's gonna go. It was kind of a rare event because usually we didn't have a car when we were living in Boston. You know, I was at the time, it was the year 2000. I was a junior in college, living in the Mission Hill section of Boston, going to school up at Tufts in Medford. So kind of commuting across the city, but usually ending up taking the T to get there. But this Saturday afternoon, we were like, yeah, let's go hang out and have some fun and we'll go wander around the city. Pat had gotten his mom's minivan from the Boston suburb that he grew up in, and we were just kind of going out for a ride. And oftentimes when we would drive around in Pat's parents' car, we would do this thing where we would take the windshield wiper fluid squirter and we would tilt it outwards. And so we would drive down the road and Pat would squirt the windshield wiper and it'd shoot windshield washer fluid everywhere and people would get all mad. Yeah, we were a whole bunch of jerks back then. Behavior I completely don't condone at this point. I think some of your best memories sometimes come from some of the dumbest things you do. And believe me, as I tell you guys this story, this is one of the dumbest things I have ever done. So like I said, there we were driving around Boston, just a bunch of college miscreants looking to burn off a Saturday afternoon before we go out and hang out and do whatever you do on a Saturday night when you're a junior in college. And we ultimately found ourselves actually out in Brookline. So for those of you not familiar with Boston geography, Brookline is kind of this, more affluent suburb directly connected to Boston. At this point, as the rings of gentrification have kind of swollen, Brookline probably feels more like Boston today. But back when we were doing this, 20 years ago or so, it was actually much more of a true feeling of like, wow, I've left the city and I'm now in the suburb. So we're out in Brookline. And we come across this reservoir, and there's just this nice big reservoir out in Brookline. And we were actually catching like a nice warmish day in early November in Boston. And so it was still feeling a little bit warm. You had to wear a jacket, but it wasn't horrible. And I remember my buddy Landon saying, hey, look at that reservoir. That looks like a pretty darn cool place. Let's go hop that fence and go in there. We all considered it for a moment, and in no time at all, Pat had parked the minivan because out in the suburbs, there's always more available parking. By the way, I've noticed one thing about being an adult. It seems like the older you get, the more and more you try to live near good, easy parking. Like when I was 18, I was trying to live as far into the city of Boston as possible where parking is a miserable situation. And then as I got older, I started to live out a little bit further, and then a little bit further. And ultimately today I find myself here where I could probably park several hundred cars just in my field alone. And parking is just not an issue. But back then, finding a parking space that was like right where you wanted to be felt like you had been kissed by the gods. We found a parking space right in front of the reservoir, right in front of this 5-foot high wrought iron metal fence. It was one of those metal fences with the vertical bars, and it had sort of a spiky tip on the top of it, but not like super razor sharp, but just it was a pointed tip. So we decided, let's just go hop the fence and we'll go right over. There was like a gate far around the side, but it was kind of a far walk, like, I don't know, maybe from the distance of me right now to where my barn is down there, so not really far. But it felt like somewhat of a far walk, and us being lazy, college students, we were like, forget it, let's just hop that fence. And so we all started to hop the fence. So first Pat went over, and then Landon went over, and then my other friend, who again, I'm blanking on their name, went over. And then it came time for me to go over. And so as I got to it, I basically climbed up to the top of the fence. Like my feet were in between the metal spikes. I was like standing on top of the fence. And I remember looking out and feeling like, wow, this is an awesome feeling. You know, I was never always the most agile or nimble kid growing up. The fact that I was able to even scale and do that felt like a personal physical challenge that I'd accomplished, which I know is a little bit sad. But that's how I was feeling at the time. And so I said, yes, let's do this. And so I took one big leap up to jump over the fence and off towards the reservoir. But as I jumped, I didn't realize that one of my sneaker laces, and I was wearing like high tops actually, but like one of the sneaker laces up near the top had actually gotten itself somehow hooked on one of the metal spikes. So as I jumped, it sort of pulled me back down and hooked me back and kept me close to the fence, and I fell downward. And as I fell downward, the metal post of the spike went right in through my ankle and down out through the bottom of my foot.
And take that meat and just thread it onto the skewers.
And I was hanging upside down, literally skewed on this fence post.
Oh, son of a... That's gonna leave a mark.
The pain was absolutely blinding. I remember shouting out, not like a girlish like scream cry, but more like a ah! Sorry, Toby. Didn't mean to scare you there. I was just doing a demonstration. It's all good. Things are cool. Things are cool. Kind of freaked the dog out. There I was hanging upside down with the meat of my foot being the only thing suspending me in the air, hanging from this metal post. It was insane. My friends immediately ran to me and saw what happened. Oh wait, I actually remember who the fifth person was now. It was my buddy Adam Metropolis. He was the one who first started to push my foot up and get me off of the fence post. I think my buddy Pat actually also helped out, where they pushed my foot off so that I got unhooked from the fence post and it went back out the other way, basically.
Oh, that's gonna leave a mark.
Through my ankle and through my foot. And I was unhooked and I fell downward onto the ground. And now this was the other problem. I was now on the wrong side of the fence post to get back to the car so that my friends could take me to the hospital. And so there I was, writhing in agony on the ground as my friends all got together and picked me up and basically dumped me like a dead weight over to the other side of the fence so that they could take me back to Pat's car and they would be able to actually take me to the emergency room. Release the Kraken! How are you doing this morning, guys? Huh? Now, because of the pain, I don't really remember all that much about the ride from the reservoir to the hospital. There were really only 3 things I recall. First off, I recall a spirited debate amongst my friends about whether or not they could take me to Brigham and Women's Hospital. Brigham and Women's Hospital was the hospital that is actually closest to where my apartment was, and it was also pretty darn close to where the reservoir was. And so it made sense geographically to go there. And in fact, I also remember it being one of the top hospitals at the time. I don't know, maybe it's still a top hospital, because they had this like big banner out in front of the hospital saying it was like one of the top 10 hospitals in the United States as ranked by US World News and Reports. And I remember seeing it as I'd walk by the building every day. But then some of my friends said, no, you can't bring him to that hospital because he's a dude and guys can't go to Brigham and Women's Hospital. But ultimately, good sense overruled that, and they took me there. And yes, they do take men at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I just remember being jammed in the back seat, riding in the middle with two friends like wedging me in, and me trying to sprawl out to keep my leg elevated. But we made it to the hospital, and they got me checked into the ER. I remember sitting there and being very worried. I was looking at my foot. It was a bloody, shredded mess. All I could feel was a blinding flash of pain from my calf on down. As I was sitting there, I was saying, oh wow, this is gonna be more than just a couple of stitches.
Just a flesh wound.
And as the first triage nurse actually looked at me and I explained what happened, she said, uh-oh, we gotta get a doctor looking at you real quick because we think we might have to amputate the foot. A doctor came in and he looked at it, hemmed and hawed, and then left. And so I sat there on like a hospital cart thingy, waiting for like about 2 hours. And I had these horrible visions of having to have my foot amputated and what that would mean and what that would cost and how long it would knock me out of school and what that would do to my life and how I'd have to get a robotic foot and learn how to walk on the robotic foot. And it was all this like horrible thinking and scary thinking that I was having flash through my brain. A couple hours later, the doctor who actually came in to finally treat me ended up giving me like about 67 stitches to repair it all up. And he said that yes, the post had gone like clean through my foot. He said I was very lucky. I guess there was like a major artery or something that I could have hit, and it was very close to hitting, but it missed all of that, and it really just went pretty clean through the meat of the foot with just only minor damage to the tendons themselves. My friends came and picked me up and took me back to our house that we all lived in, and I just sat there in my bed with my leg elevated on a copious amount of painkillers and cried myself to sleep because I was in agony. I ended up staying in Boston for a couple of days and going back to my mom's house, and I was basically knocked out of school for pretty much entirely until finals started. I remember going back to Boston. I was on crutches trying to navigate the city, and it was kind of awful. Sort of a dark period for me. But as I got through it and I got past it, I realized that I was actually really lucky too. I was really lucky that my friends were there with me. I was really lucky that my friends were there to help me get to the hospital. And then I was even really lucky that I was able to go to my mom's house and go there and recuperate, and she'd be willing to like wait on me hand and foot and take care of me and let me get back up and running. And I was really lucky that, heck, I didn't lose my foot. And I guess just the other day I was thinking about it after my little hand accident here. I was thinking about how my stupidity can often cause a lot of my own problems. Usually it's going to be a combination of good fortune and the people that you love that help you through it. Now, I guess no gruesome injury story would be complete without actually showing the gruesome injury, so let's take a look. So you can kind of still see the point here, like right along the side. That's where the scar is from where it entered in. And then it went out through the bottom of my foot. And you actually really can't even quite see the scar. There's like a mass of like lumpy scar tissue right here, but other than that, yeah, it was like basically I was skewered just like this. They did a nice job stitching it all back up, but it was pretty darn wide. I had to like keep packing it with gauze for like a month and a half or something. It was ridiculous. Lots and lots of doctor's appointments. It was a rough experience. Of course, it looks like nothing right now compared to my hand, which seems to be in a much worse situation right now. And so the other night, I was actually making dinner for Allison and me. I was trying to do something to spice things up, and I decided to go on a culinary adventure and try to make polenta fries. Allison loves to eat polenta fries. And so what I was doing is I got the oil in the pan, I got it all heating up, and I cut my slices of polenta and cut them into sort of fat little French fry sizes. And I was taking the tongs to dip them into the hot burning oil. As I pulled it from the plate, one of the polenta fries slipped out of the tongs, fell into the oil splashed and splattered all up and down my skin. And so what you can see here are all the splatter marks from all the oil. According to Allison, it was a combination of 1st and 2nd degree burns. It hurts like the dickens. And oh man, it was a rough one. But again, I felt very lucky. I felt like that could have been much, much worse. I felt like I should have been much, much more careful. And I was really glad that I had Allison there to attend to my medical needs. And so it really can just go to show you just how fortunate you can be. And when you think about other people who are actually in less fortunate situations, just know that you're not that far off from being that person. You could have had one bad break or another bad break that goes the wrong way for you, and you could be in a horrible state. And so when I look out in the world right now and see a lot of people struggling, and some people actually blaming those people who are struggling, I say that that's really unfair, because you know they're not looking for that. And yeah, maybe it was their dumb accident that screwed them up, but they just caught the wrong side of a coin flip. And you know, a little bit of compassion goes a really, really long way.